Welcome to the Modern Monk Movement, where we work to unite people through their differences to focus on things that matter. Today, we are talking about the concepts of money and power, and we're going to show you through storytelling how when you empower people, you make more money. Hey friend, top of the morning to ya. How's your day kicking off? Good. Mine's going good. This morning, as I emerged from meditating, I was thinking a lot about the concept of power. Let's do a little word association really quick, because I'm curious what you think. When you think about the word power, what are some words that you typically associate with that concept? For me, the first ones that come to mind is money, control. They say power or money is power. When I think about power, you think often about like people who are in positions of authority, right? You think about people in authority are in control of things, right? So money is power. So I think money is a word association that we often have with the concept of power, and then also authority and control. Okay, so like usual today, I want to take you into a story where we kind of elaborate these concepts, knowing that we have an assumption, right? The assumption is that money is power. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I want to see if by the end of this conversation, you consider power in the same way as you did before. But before we jump into the story, as I'm telling this story today, I want you to think about this. How does it feel when somebody has power, authority, and control over you? Okay. So as a reminder, if you don't remember from some of my previous videos, in my previous role, I covered a business line within one of the major banks, and one of my core responsibilities with working with our sales team, one of our top producing sales teams in the local market, they did B2B sales. My role was to help identify what were the performance gaps and address those, and then specifically work to coach and develop some of our employees. And on this particular occasion, I was invited to go coach and develop an employee who had been underperforming in their position for a few, honestly, it was probably 2 quarters. For 2 quarters, they had been pretty significantly underperforming in their position. And their previous boss, I had seen them try to work with this employee. This employee was someone who he was a fiery personality. He had a little bit of an ego and took a lot of pride in the moments where he did well, but obviously felt really bad when he didn't do things well. And I had watched his previous boss work with him and use words like, my expectation is that you meet the goals that we've set for you, or here are your goals, you're not meeting the expectations, what are you going to do differently, right? And you might be thinking, well, yeah, that's how we talk to people. We tell them what our expectations is. We tell them what they're supposed to be doing. And while that is a way we've done things historically, as we assert authority over people, right? What I have found is that is an ineffective method, because thinking about yourself for a minute, if you hear of the response from this man who is being coached in that way, I think you'll understand it a little bit. As soon as we start saying my expectations, or you're not doing this, or this is what you need to do instead, people already know what those things are. So naturally, they go on the defense like this employee did and started explaining all of the reasons why he hadn't been performing in his job. Here's the thing. We know in leadership, the reasons, right, are at some point insignificant when it comes to the need for results. Because at the end of the day, regardless of your role within an organization or a team, right, we need results. That's whether you're in a sports team for fun, whether you're working part of a cohort of people who are trying to accomplish a goal, or you work for a paycheck within an organization. You need to be a performing member of the team in order for the team to be high functioning. Can we agree on that? Okay, so we got to be a high functioning individual member of the team. the question becomes, how do we get people to be high functioning? Because as soon as people go on the defense like that, we're activating fight or flight in their brain. They call it the oldest part of our brain. It's the lizard brain, right? When I was a kid, I grew up in southern Utah, and I loved catching lizards. There was a breed of lizard there called a ringneck lizard that are really scaly and very fast, and they're pretty big and thick. And they could run really fast, but if you were a skilled lizard catcher like I was, Steve Irwin was my idol growing up, so I had studied all of his methods and followed them to a T and was able to successfully catch a lot of lizards when I was a kid. I would catch these ringneck lizards, and then they would go crazy, try to bite me, and successfully biting me, right? So they originally tried to flight, run away from me, but when that didn't work, they tried to bite me. So when people talk about fight or flight, they mean this. It's our lizard part of our brain. When we're put in a position where we have to be on the defense, we're either going to run away from the situation or we're going to fight our way through. Here's what I want to just bring you into an acknowledgement of. Humans, when in fight or flight, are incapable of thinking critically. The value of critical thinking is it makes us have the ability to make better decisions. And when we can make better decisions, it helps us keep up with our performance goals. It helps us really identify what are the root issues for why something is not happening in the way that it is, and then decide in an emotionally neutral space what we need to do next. But if we're having to defend ourselves all the time, then it's not helpful to the processes of us thinking about what we need to do next. So when I had observed this previous manager come in and poke on all the things that you're doing wrong, of course, this person goes on the defense, and this becomes a very unhelpful way of talking to this individual. So when I came in, I approached it a different way. Now, to tell you how I approached it, I'm going to share one more quick story with you so you can understand what compassion means and the idea of a balance of masculine and feminine energy, or yin and yang, when you're coming into a conversation with humans, right? Because I think we get lost in the world a little bit when we start talking about toxic masculinity or effeminate qualities in men, when it's like, actually, whether you're man or woman, there's a balanced approach as an intellectual species, right? We are an intellectual species. We are not like our less evolved fellow animals in the animal kingdom. Humans have evolved our brains to the point where we can think in situations if we allow ourselves to, right? So when we come into a situation, you can bring both masculine and feminine qualities. The example that I'll give you is a friend that I have. His name is Cliff. I lived in a small rural community, state in Oregon, for about 10 years when I first moved to Oregon. And as a result, I met a lot of small town, homegrown, good old boys, right? And Cliff was one of those men. Cliff worked as a supervisor at a local wood manufacturer. He was a guy who loved going and driving his Jeep out on the weekends. He loved to go hunting. He was a fisherman. He loved playing football with his 3 sons. He was at all of his sons' games. All of his sons were like triple athletes, football, basketball, like wrestling type of guys. Like they were the good old boys of the town. What I found fascinating, though, is one day I had slept the night over at Cliff's house, and I had woke up the next day. And just a little background on Cliff is Cliff's first marriage didn't work out, and his ex-wife wasn't able to be a helpful mother to her children and really give her boys the love and nurturing that often come from the more female role in the relationship, right? And so Cliff naturally assumed the role of nurturer for his sons as well. In this specific morning example, I woke up and Cliff was in the kitchen before everybody was awake, making breakfast for his boys. As his teenage boys started walking out of their rooms and had groggy eyes, as they walked into the kitchen, they automatically went to their dad, where their dad gave them a great big hug and a kiss on the cheek. This is a beautiful example of a man who represents every aspect of masculinity, but also understands the power of compassion and love. His boys also knew if they messed up and got in trouble, they were going to get a firm hand. That doesn't mean a backhand, but a firm hand to understand the consequences for our action, because that's what compassion is. Compassion invites us in to be loving and nurturing, but honest, true, and just, and courageous in conversations. So Cliff became a model for me early on. This was probably in my early 20s when I saw this example. So then fast forward, when I'm coming into work with this employee, I'm seeing he's underperforming in his job. We already know that is true. So typically I'm going to enter in with an assumption that people want to do good work. Nobody wants to experience being a failure. Think about yourself. Do you like feeling like a failure? Most people will say no to that. So I'm assuming good intent. That's called pronoia versus paranoia, right? I also assume that people are doing the best with the tools and resources they have available to them today, and that people want to win, right? So when I come into a situation, I spend about 3 different visits just observing, listening, and helping them to understand for themselves what are their goals and what are they trying to accomplish. What you'll find is that people want to accomplish their goals much more than they want to accomplish your goals. When you're always telling people what you want from them, you take away their autonomy because you assert authority over them, and now they're always trying to perform to what your goals are versus what their individual goals are. But you can't learn their individual goals unless you listen for a while. Another one of my mentors, I've shared in past videos that I was a Pentecostal preacher for 8 years, being groomed to become a pastor. During this time, my pastor sat me down and he said, "Brother, if you take over a new church and there is a chair sitting in the middle of the aisle that makes no sense to you, don't touch that chair until you understand people's relationship with that chair." When we're working with people, it's important that we listen without judgment, that we take information as neutral, that we don't try to change their behaviors yet until we understand why they exist, what the person's goals are, and what's getting in their way. So typically what I'll do is I'll show up and I'll encourage people for the first 3 sessions that I sit down with them and help understand their goals, encourage them in the direction that they're going. And when they likely aren't, meeting their own expectations of themselves over the course of those 3 different coaching sessions, on the last session, that's when I push everything aside and have a serious heart-to-heart conversation. And that's what had happened with this employee. We had come together 3 different times. I created a safe space where I wasn't judging the individual. I didn't get mad at him for underperforming in his position. It's not my role to get mad at somebody else for not accomplishing their goal. Right now, I bought a fiddle leaf fig plant a couple months ago, and I was so excited because I always wanted a fiddle leaf fig plant. And this dang thing has started dying on me. And listen, I'm angry, but I can't get mad at the plant. The plant is not its fault. The plant is just doing what it naturally does, and I got to get to the root of the issue to understand, it needed to be repotted so that it can grow. If we can look at ourselves more like someone tending to a plant when we're working with humans with that mindset, it's very helpful in the development of humans. So fast forwarding to this employee, we finally got to the place where it was like, man, he wasn't growing. So now we needed to address why. Instead of talking about performance, I pushed everything aside and said, "What's going on, man? How are you?" And open up a conversation and listen without judgment about what is going on in your life. And as I created a safe space, he opened up and told me, it's not just at work that he's underperforming. He's numbing out with substances in his home life. He's not delivering to what it means for him to be a husband to his wife. He's not doing extracurricular activities. His friends have kind of faded away, and he's just not feeling like a winner in any part of his life. This is when we bring that Cliff compassion and love. When you see someone on the other side of the table or next to you or around you who's experiencing this low, it's not time to bring that dominance in to force them to the next move. It's time to feel and show them love. that doesn't mean we don't go to the next place. Once you can show someone love or empathy or compassion and you feel with them for a second, then we can take them to the next place of saying, okay, now where do you want to focus your intention? If there's one thing that you can improve in your life, where do you want your focus area to be? We can't focus on all things at once. If you feel like you're failing in every part of your life, we can't focus on everything at once. Where is the place that you would like to spend your attention? And of course, if you're in the workplace, people know I get my income that provides my lifestyle from work. So it's important that I perform here and I figure out how to get re-engaged. And of course, that's what this dude, he chose. He was like, I want to focus here. I got to figure out what to do next. So then we go to define what is the actual problem in your performance? What's holding you back? And you'll find once people get out of the emotional place because you showed up with them, you actually listened, you actually cared, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you show how much you actually care, and then we go into the part of defining the problem. What is your actual issue? This isn't you defining it for them. This is them defining the problem for themselves. Then they define the problem, and then once you understand what the problem is, then you have them brainstorm solutions to their problem. Their performance is their problem. It's their opportunity, maybe is a better way to say that. That is not your responsibility. It is their responsibility to take care of. You are creating a safe environment to keep them out of fight or flight. You don't want a person in fight or flight because then again, they're always performing within your authority and control. And you have to know, when you set people free and you give them autonomy, they're going to surprise you and perform better than you ever could if you let them. You got to remove your own ego and release them from your control and authority and let their problems be their own and help them think critically. And once someone can think critically, now the sky's the limit and you help them define what are all the things that you can do. Now, what is the one thing that you should start today that's going to make a significant difference? And this person was able to define that. They needed to start doing a very specific thing. And then the next time we came together, they had made progress in that thing. Does that mean overnight they were a success and started killing it in their job? No, but this was the first time in our conversations over the course of 6 weeks that they had made progress. So now that they were making progress, we had momentum. And once somebody has momentum, you have something to work with because you want people to be in a zone where they have momentum, because momentum, like the snowball going down the hill, builds upon itself. And as you can get them having momentum and winning in small categories, then you help them expand into others. So this employee, we continued to work together, and finally he got to a place where he was performing in his job. But not only that, during the time we were working together, he lost 25 pounds. I wasn't coaching him on physical fitness. The point is that action begets action. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you're able to learn that life can be simplified down to daily decisions, setting a goal and then making the decision to show up to your goal every day and see progress on a daily basis, then you realize it can be cascaded across other parts of your life. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So this dude was able to start performing in his job and then found out, you know what? He didn't even want to do that job. He was able to get promoted to a different job that was better for him, and he got more engaged. So backing up for just a second, right? We started this conversation talking about power today. I want to help you understand that, yes, the association with power and money, but also control and authority. With this example, learning from the examples also from Cliff and my pastor and this exact person, what is better for us to replace with these concepts is influence, right? And trust and inspiration. When we can build trust with someone like we did with this employee, right? Then we can inspire growth and change, right? Influence and manipulation are two different things. Manipulation is something we often try to use within the context of authority, control, and power, right? Influence is when you understand somebody's goal and their purpose and where they're going. Then you can help influence their mindset to help them think critically and think in terms of possibility. Influence is a beautiful, positive thing when you can filter in a direction that is pro the human in front of you, that's giving them a sense of their own power and authority over their own self. And now, instead of you assuming power over somebody else, you empower them, right? Empower versus assume power, which makes people become their own hero. But if you're always assuming power, control, and authority over people, when they have a problem, you're going to have to be the person to come solve their problem. And that is not great leadership. Great leadership is when we learn to empower the people in front of us, help them think critically, and help them achieve their goals. And listen, it's not always going to happen this way. I have another example of an employee that I won't go into full detail, but she was in the exact same position as this dude. And you know what? At the end of our conversation, she just realized she hated the kind of work that she was doing, and she made a conscious decision to go do something else. At no point did I make her feel bad about her underperformance. At no point did I make it about me. It was all about her and the fact that she wants to do good in the world. She wants to achieve some sort of accomplishment in whatever she's doing. She wants to feel like she's being a contributing member. So all it was just helping her realize that all of those things are true and reminding her that she has the autonomy and choice to go and do something that makes her feel more fulfilled. Couple data points I'll throw at you, and then I'm going to wrap up because I'm getting pretty close here. Gallup, right? They're a worldwide polling company. They did their largest worldwide study across 150 countries. They worked with 300 of the world's largest organizations, and they had 30 years worth of data that they brought in. They saw in that study, 70% of the variance of engagement on a team is solely determined by a manager. And when we learn to engage employees in this format that I was just explaining to you, we see less than 1% disengagement on teams. That's pretty significant when you consider this was pre-pandemic. Less than 15% of the world's population was considered engaged at work. This is the whole quiet quitting thing that you're hearing a lot about. This is the great resignation. Like, people don't feel engaged in their work because they're not being engaged in a human way where we help empower people versus assume power over them. And so the idea is not only will you see less than 1% disengagement, but Gallup indicates that when you know how to coach and develop your people, whether you're on a sports team or a sales team like this, for this example, because I'm going to talk about sales results on a sales team, you'll see Gallup will indicate, I think they say 29% increase in revenue, 19% increase in sales within a team if you're able to follow just a little bit of a different approach and helping guide people to their own sense of power versus assuming power over them. Now remember, we started this conversation saying money is power, right? Well, what I just told you is that we can see high percentage increase in sales if we learn to empower people. So I'm going to say money comes from empowering people. So yes, power is money, but it's when people are in their own sense of power and their own sense of authority. Okay, I got to wrap up for today. Hey, remember, advice is like eating fish. You gotta pick out the bones. Have a good rest of your day.